Well, hello eighthers. I hope every one of you is doing well, is doing fine along with members of your family. Uh, well, Dhanbad wasn't a COVID area, or Dhanbad was not seeing so many COVID-19 cases, but then suddenly, since yesterday, that is, I'm making this video today on a Sunday, and yesterday was a Saturday. So since yesterday, there has been a very sharp increase of 21 cases, and many cases are there nearby me. So well, we are in a very it's not a very fearful situation, but then there is some reason to be perplexed. I'll advise, please do not venture much out of your homes, and if your family members are moving out, please ask them to take all the precautions they can, so as to keep themselves and so as to keep everyone in your family safe and sound. Now, coming back to our topic, that is history, I hope that the previous things which were done are clear to you all. Today, in the last class, or in the last video actually, we were done with the political causes. Now, when we were talking of the political causes, I had mentioned about Louis XVI, the king, and his queen, Mary Antoinette, or his wife, Mary Antoinette. Now, these two were very autocratic leaders, and these two, the monarchs of France at that time, were not very people friendly. They did not care much about the concerns of the people, and they did not have much, or they did not keep in contact with the feelings or with the emotions and also of the problems of the people. This gave rise to lots of resentment from the people or from the general public of France. When we are talking of the social causes, now social causes over here is is a lot related to the political causes. When the king isn't much caring about his or about the people he rules over, then the officials of the king will also have somewhat a similar stance or somewhat a similar attitude towards the people. That is why, or France at that time was divided into three estates. Estates over here means three groupings of the public, which you may understand. The people of France were divided into three groups. There was the first estate, which comprised of the clergy. What is the clergy actually? The clergy means, or the clergy is the officials of the church, or the priests and the priestly class of the church. Next came the second estate, which consisted of the nobility. Nobility, that is the nobles. Nobles used to be during the times of kings and queens. Nobles were the high-ranking officials who worked under the king, and who also maintained soldiers and also took care of different parts of lands and also different territories for the king. They paid some annual tribute to some annual taxes to the king, and in return they gave the king the supply of their soldiers and their armed men in times of need when it arose for the king. Now, the second estate consisted of the nobility, and the third estate consisted of every other person who was there in France. People who are not belonging to the nobility and people who are not belonging to the clergy are the people, or were the people of the third estate. Now, this third estate comprised of nearly 95% of the people of France. This third estate made up the most, or the huge population, or made up a huge population of France. And this third estate, when we are talking of this third estate, this consisted mainly of the middle class, which is known as the bourgeois. Now, this bourgeois or the middle class were the ones who were paying the maximum amount of taxes. They were the ones who were being taxed for each and everything, and it was their taxes which was being used by the other two estates, that is the first estate comprising of the clergy and the second estate comprising of the nobility. These two estates were enjoying the taxes which were being paid by the people of the third estate, and the third estate people did not have or did not get any such benefit from the taxes which they paid to the government of France or to the king of France. And this third estate did not have any such facilities which were given to them. Not much care was taken about their problems, and all of this gave rise to a very popular anger against. You can understand, if 95% of the people who are being robbed practically of their money and their riches, and also of whatever they were earning as taxes, because they were being practically taxed on everything, and all of their taxes was going for the benefit of the other two estates, and none of the benefits were passing or were being passed on to this third estate. So the 95% of the people were angry, and it was just a matter of time before this 95% of the people rose against the other 5% of the people. Now, while we are talking of this, there are also the economic causes. Now the political causes, the social causes, and the economic causes. We cannot look at all these three causes separately. All these three causes are actually intertwined, or all these three causes have some amount of relation with each other. And when we are talking of the economic causes, the economic cause over here is that the first and the second estate were not paying any taxes. This, as again, it was there in the social causes also. So this is one of the most important economic cause also, that the first and the second estate were not paying any of the taxes, but they were enjoying the taxes, or they were getting all the benefit. They were enjoying their lives. They were living their lives in extravagance, that is in all the luxuries, and they were the ones who were enjoying the taxes which were being paid by the people of the third estate. So this caused some amount of anger in the people of the third estate, and gradually and slowly this this became one of the reasons why the people of France rose against the nobility, or rose against the king and the queen of France. Again, the people of the third estate were being taxed on practically everything. So this and many of the times the people of the third estate were forced to work without any pay. Yes, this was one of the things which was prevalent in that times France, that in a year, some of the days or some part of the year was reserved for the people of the third estate, in which they had to work for free, and they had to work in that time meant mostly of agriculture. So they had to cultivate and they had to work in the fields of the nobility without being paid. So this was also another humiliation which was being heaped upon the people of the third estate. They were not being paid to work. They were a sort of bonded labor, you may say. So this also became one of the reasons why people became angry. Now there were people, or there were intellectuals. Who are intellectuals actually? Intellectuals are people who inspire us, who give us newer ideas. So there was a few intellectuals who were on the rise in France, and such intellectuals, or the ideas which those intellectuals gave, inspired the people of France to maybe somehow or somewhere rise up against the nobility of France, or rise up against the tyranny. Or what does tyranny mean? Tyranny means when someone is ruling over you in a very harsh way. So they rose against the tyranny, which was, or the tyrannical rule of the king and the queen of France. A few intellectuals who inspired the people of France, or who inspired the French Revolution, were Voltaire, Rousseau, and now there was also this influence of the American Civil War. Now some people of the, or some soldiers of the, or some soldiers of France had participated in the American Civil War, and had fought alongside the Americans against the English, or against the Britishers. So these people, when they came back from America to France, they understood that they understood that freedom can be won by an armed struggle. So they again started motivating the other people. They started giving the other people ideas, the other people of France ideas, that yes, we can also gain our independence, we can also become free, we can also become a republic if we take up arms. Now what happened was that there was a very important event which happened. There was all these reasons which we spoke about, the political reasons, the social reasons, the economic reasons. All these reasons which we spoke about were giving rise, or all these reasons were caused some amount of anger and resentment amongst the people of France. But then there was no such direct, or you need to have a spark. What gave that spark? We'll be coming to that later. But we should keep in mind one thing. It was in 1789. And in 1789, the Estates General was summoned. Now, Estates General, what is the Estates General? Estates General is nothing but a sort of a parliament kind of a thing, in which representatives or members from the three estates, the first estate, the second estate and the third estate, used to come together for discussing different laws and for discussing the situation of the nation. Now this estate general was last summoned, or the estate general last met, the last time there was any kind of a parliament kind of a thing in France, it was in 1614, and nearly after 200 years or 170 years nearly, there was another summoning of the Estates General, or the Estates General was again called together. Why was this done? Because King Louis XVI understood that the people of France are getting angry and we need to have some kind of a, or the people of France have to have the third estate especially, they also have to, we have to give them some chance to raise their voices and to put before us or put before the king their problems and their demands. So the Estates General was summoned in 1789. In 1777, 1778 and also in the year 1789, France had experienced very severe famines or drought-like situations, and there was the agricultural production was down, or the agricultural production which was there in these 3 years was the lowest in the last 50 years. So the people of France were starving, and also the treasury of France, or treasury of the King of France. When we are talking of the treasury, what does treasury mean? Treasury over here means that the money which was there with the King of France, it was dwindling, all the reserves were dwindling, or it was lessening. Why? Because there was people were not able to pay their taxes, because there was widespread drought like situation in France for the previous 3 years. Agricultural productivity was very, very low. So there was a severe crisis or financial crisis which France was facing at that time. So the king understood that there needed to be a Estates General, or the summoning of the Estates General, so that people could come together, discuss ideas. The king was ready actually in some ways to give into the demands of the people of the third estate. So the Estates General was summoned in 1789. But there was one flaw, or there was one shortcoming in this Estates General. While we talk of our parliament, we have done the chapter parliament in the previous chapters. When we are talking of the, or when we talked of the parliament, we had discussed about the voting procedures. Each member of the parliament, when we are talking of our parliament, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, so each member of our parliament carries or has one vote to his name. So whenever there is a voting going on any policy of the parliament, each member has one vote, or each member can vote, or the value of the vote of each member is equal, that is 1. Now, when we are talking of the Estates General, there was a very serious flaw over here. Each estate had one vote. That means the entire members, or the members of the first estate had one vote in total. The members of the second estate had one vote in total, and the members of the third estate had one vote in total. So it means there were only 3 votes. All the members of the first estate would be giving one vote. All the members together of the second estate will be giving another vote, that is the second vote, and all the members of the third estate will be giving the third vote. Why is this a problem? It is a problem because the 5% of the people who are making up the first estate and the second estate have 2 votes. One is of the first estate and the other is of the members of the second estate. And the 95% of the people, they have with them only one vote, that is the vote of the third estate combined. So this was a flaw, because whatever the third estate wanted, that could never be passed in the parliament, or that could never be passed in the Estates General. Why? Because voting is always done on a majority, and it was always the 5% were always in majority, because they had 2 votes to them, that is of the first estate combined and the second estates combined. But the third estate, even though it was having the maximum number of people, 95% of the population was the third estates, and their representatives were representing 95% of the people of France, still they had just one vote to themselves. So this was one very important thing which we have to keep in mind, and this was a very, very important flaw. And because of this, most of the decisions which were taken in the Estates General in 1789, they were not up to the likings of the third estate. Why? Because whatever the third estate demanded, it did not get passed because the other two estates had the majority of the vote. So the third estate, they broke out of this Estates General and they formed the National Assembly in 1789. So this National Assembly, the formation of the National Assembly happened because the first estate and the second estate held the maximum number of votes, and the third estate, knowing that this none of their demands will be passed because they are in the minority, they formed a National Assembly. National Assembly over here is another parliament kind of a thing. So they formed a parliament of their own in or on the 17th of June 1789. Now let us leave it till the formation of the National Assembly today, and in the next video lecture we'll be completing the remaining parts of the chapter and we'll be wrapping up this chapter. Till then, please stay safe. That is what I'll be telling you all again and again. Be safe and also pray for everyone around us who are infected, and please also keep on staying happy, keep on smiling, and keep on doing things which you all love. Thank you.